want to start this evening with something that Muhammad Yunus said when he accepted the Nobel Peace Prize in 2006. He pointed out then that many business people don't just want to make a profit. Although, of course, it's very important to point out there is nothing wrong with business people wanting to make a profit. But as well as that, most business people, and this is certainly true in my experience, also want to do good for the people that they serve, and they want to do good for the world. Like many of us, they want to play their small part, some a very big part, in making the world a better place. And denying that side of their motivation, as Muhammad Yunus said, insulates entrepreneurs from all political, emotional, social, spiritual, environmental dimensions of their lives. Now, we all know that the business sector is absolutely essential for our society. It's businesses, strong, dynamic, successful businesses, that create the wealth and generate the jobs and the prosperity that we all depend on. Without that wealth creation and prosperity and jobs, we wouldn't be able to provide the healthcare and the education and the many assets of our society that we value so highly. And of course, in Scotland, we're already hugely fortunate to have a strong, vibrant, competitive, growing economy with internationally recognised strength in a range of sectors, the creative industries, life sciences, energy, tourism, food and drink, to name just a few of the strong, growing sectors of the Scottish economy. And the government I am privileged to lead is determined to do everything we can to encourage and to support that economy. We support good infrastructure, skills and innovation, some of the essential tools that businesses need to thrive and to succeed. And we support and promote Scottish exports right across our globe. We also support investment into Scotland. Indeed, that's one of the purposes of my visit here to New York this week, one of the great business centres of the world. Scotland is, in fact, the most successful part of the United Kingdom when it comes to attracting foreign direct investment outside of London and the southeast of England. So we've much to celebrate, but we want to do more. We want to succeed even more in the future. So the message I bring with me to the United States this week is essentially a simple one. Scotland is open for business. We are an environment in which it is fantastic to work, to live, to study, to invest, to create jobs. And that's the message that we send out across the United States and the wider world. And we're very proud of the support we give to businesses. So if you're looking for somewhere for your business to grow, somewhere for your business to prosper and make money, Scotland is a very good place for you to consider. One final point I would make on that, as I punt everything that Scotland has to offer, is that relatively speaking, we're also a very cost-effective place to do business. You know, it's somewhere in the region of 30 to 40% less expensive to start up and run an operation in Scotland than it would be in major international centres like London and Paris. So we have absolutely everything going for us. So please feel free to consider your investment. But I want to come back to Muhammad Yunus and something that he did, which I think is very important. He recognised that and recognises that the profit motive is important. Of course it is important, but it's not everything. The vast majority of companies, the vast majority of entrepreneurs have a very genuine interest in the wider community. And indeed, this city, with its history and reputation and current reality of generous philanthropy, is a good example of just that. People wanting, yes, to create wealth, but then to use that wealth for the greater good of society. Business people have a genuine interest in making our society better. And Glasgow Caledonian's Business for Society course looks, for example, at social enterprise in some considerable detail. So I want to mention that this evening as one example which I think is likely to grow in importance in future. The Scottish Government established a strategy for supporting social enterprises in Scotland in our very first year in office. We value highly the benefits that they bring to local communities. We value highly the innovation that they create by often establishing a very different business model for goods and services. Social Bite, I don't know if anybody here has heard of Social Bite. It's a Scottish social business which provides catering services. And I mention it specifically because it was directly inspired by Mohammed Yunus's work. A quarter of the staff who work for Social Bite are people who were formerly homeless people. Every penny of the profits that Social Bite makes goes into good causes. Back in December last year, they ran a campaign that was aimed at providing Christmas lunches for homeless people. That campaign was so successful that it attracted 35,000 donations, which means that they weren't just able to provide lunches on Christmas Day or over the Christmas period. They can now provide lunches for homeless people right throughout the year. I have to tell you, this may be of interest to some people in the audience, that Social Bite is currently running a competition in which the first prize is a lunch in one of their cafes later this year with George Clooney. So if anybody here wants details on how to enter that competition, for a small fee I'm prepared to share them, although I should advise you that the winner of the competition has obviously already been selected, because it would be completely unacceptable for the First Minister of Scotland not to greet George Clooney when he came to Social Bite. Anyway, Social Bite is just one of thousands of social enterprises in Scotland, and the number continues to grow. And of course, we're keen to learn from other people's experiences as well. We established the first ever Social Enterprise World Forum back in 2008, and we encourage international social enterprises to base themselves in Scotland. But we also know that all businesses, not just social enterprises, have an interest in wider society. After all, as I was saying earlier on, businesses are not separate from the society in which they sit. They're part of that society. Managers, shareholders, board members all benefit from good quality public services, from high quality infrastructure. They benefit from vibrant cities, places not just to live in but to work and play in as well, and they benefit from beautiful landscapes. And so most businesses, in my experience, genuinely want to make that wider contribution to society. It's good for their reputation, it's good for their sense of values, because it's good for society as a whole, but it's also, because of that, in their own long-term interests. It is, in short, good for the bottom line of businesses as well. Of course, some companies, completely understandably, might need some help or support in order to do the right thing, or might take some convincing that it won't hurt their profitability or their competitiveness. So the starting point of the Scottish Government in looking to create a fairer society as well as a wealthier economy, our starting point is to encourage as many businesses and entrepreneurs as possible to act out of enlightened self-interest. We work to create a dialogue, a partnership with them to help them do just that, because at the heart of our economic strategy as a country is this, in my view, self-evident truth that a fairer society and a stronger economy are not competing objectives. They are two sides of the same coin. If we have a stronger economy creating more wealth, then clearly we are going to be able to invest in the social assets that mean so much to us. But if everybody in our society has the ability to contribute, to give of themselves, to make sure that their skills and their talents are used to full potential, then the economy is going to be more productive and more innovative and more successful as well. So that's the philosophy, the ethos at the heart of the Scottish Government's economic strategy. And to give one example of how we're giving life to that ethos and that principle, let me look at a policy that is very important to us in Scotland, the extension of a living wage. The living wage in Scotland and the UK is based on research calculating how much money households need to maintain a minimum standard of living. Not a luxurious standard of living, but a minimum standard of living. In Scotland, it's currently set at £7.85 an hour. That's approximately $12.10, which is significantly higher than the minimum wage of $10 an hour. Now, the living wage is obviously something that is good for employees, it's good for society as a whole, but we also believe it's good for individual companies as well. Just a couple of weeks ago, we published some research on the impact and the practicalities of companies introducing the living wage for their employees. And that research found that for many individual firms, the higher wage costs that can sometimes understandably be a barrier to companies paying the living wage were actually covered by increased productivity, lower absenteeism, and higher staff retention. And we've had a fantastic response from companies to the campaign to extend the reach of the living wage. When I became First Minister last November, I set a target. You know, politicians like setting targets. I set a target of having 150 employers signing up for living wage accreditation within 1 year. That target's already been exceeded. More than 200 employers have already signed up within just 7 months, and we're now aiming to reach 500 employers by the end of next March. We've also established a Fair Work Convention, bringing together trade unions, employers and the wider public sector in Scotland. And the purpose of that Fair Work Convention is to encourage workforce policies that prioritise innovation, higher productivity and better employee engagement, to use collaboration as a way to increase the productivity and the competitiveness of businesses. And again, the message at the heart of this is that progressive policies can be good for individual businesses and by extension the wider economy as well. And as an employer ourselves, the Scottish Government tries to be a role model. We try to lead by example. And so last week, the Scottish Government became an accredited living wage employer, and Glasgow Caledonian University is also an accredited living wage employer. So that's leading by example. We also, a couple of weeks ago, launched something called the Scottish Business Pledge, which again is a good illustration of what we're trying to achieve. In terms of the pledge, which is entirely voluntary for companies, they're not forced to sign up to it, it's not mandatory, but voluntarily we're asking companies to commit to paying the living wage and to commit to some other characteristics of a progressive and competitive workplace. For example, to commit to greater gender equality in the decision-making of their companies, to commit to greater employee participation, prompt payment of suppliers so that companies right through our supply chains benefit from that as well, to commit to innovation and to growing international markets. We are a successful country when it comes to exporting. Food and drink, for example, is one of our great export strengths, but the vast majority of companies in Scotland still don't export at all. We see internationalisation and the innovation that leads to internationalisation as a key focus as we seek to grow our economy further. And in return for companies voluntarily signing up to progressive policies that help them but help society as well, our part of the bargain is that we as government will do everything we can to create a competitive business environment, to help businesses to grow, to innovate and to export, to support in short a successful economy. And that pledge enshrines the sense of shared endeavour, of common purpose that we want to build with our business community. And major companies like Virgin Money, GlaxoSmithKline have already made the decision to sign up to the Business Pledge, and I'm confident that in the months to come we'll see even more take that step, just as we've seen so many companies sign up to become living wage employers. So to conclude my opening remarks this evening, I believe this work that we're doing has a distinct Scottish context, but it also addresses issues which are of international concern. You know, I leave New York tomorrow night to travel to Washington, DC, and in Washington I'll be taking part in a session at the World Bank on equality and the economy, and having meetings at the IMF as well. And the reason for all of that is the large amount of international evidence we now have which demonstrates and illustrates that inequality isn't just bad for the individuals that are trapped in that inequality, it's bad for our economy as well, because individuals trapped in inequality are not contributing their full potential. There was IMF research which examined 173 countries over 50 years. That research shows that more unequal countries tend to have lower and less durable economic growth. So the evidence is there. Our challenge now in Scotland, and I would argue across the world, is to act on that evidence. And so a strong, productive, competitive economy and a fairer society are not competing objectives. That's at the heart of my message this evening. These are complementary objectives, and it stands to reason that all of us, government, businesses, the trade unions, the third sector, the public sector, all of us have an interest in creating a wealthier, fairer, stronger society. And I very much see in the world we live in today, where in many countries there are healthy and vibrant debates about the role of government. I very much see one of the purposes of government as being to build that sense of partnership and to foster that sense of partnership which can help us to achieve those aims. And we can do that not just by appealing to the heart, but appealing to the head as well, by making the hard economic case for more progressive practices. And by doing that, we will help businesses to benefit society, and we can ensure that a strong society brings real benefits for our businesses and for the economy as well. So thank you very much indeed for listening.